Perfect. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us as we relaunch the Scholars Portal 101 webinar. It's been a few years since we last held it, and there have been a few changes and updates since then. So if this is your first Scholars Portal 101, it's mine, yay. And you're new-ish to an OCUL library, then welcome. If it's not your first one and you've been with us for a while, welcome back. Thank you for coming. A few housekeeping notes right before we get started. This is being recorded, and the recording and slides will be shared with you all after the presentation by email, likely in the next couple of days. We will have time for a Q&A at the end, but until then, please, if you could keep your microphones off and your cameras off as well. And then during the Q&A, you're welcome to unmute, and you're welcome to drop questions in the chat as we go along, but we will probably wait to answer them until the end just for the sake of time. So we're going to begin with a land acknowledgement. We are based out of Toronto, but as usual, since with OCUL schools, we're sort of all across Ontario and maybe even across Canada, depending on where people are coming from. So we do encourage you all to sort of take a moment to reflect on where you're joining us from today. But we want to acknowledge the land on which Scholars Portal operates and upon which most of Scholars Portal staff live and work. For thousands of years, this has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. And today, this meeting place is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. So our agenda today is primarily to give you a brief but hopefully grounding overview of Scholars Portal, our relationship to OCUL, our relationship to OCUL schools, our teams, our services, and then to answer any questions that you may have about Scholars Portal. So I'm going to begin by passing it over to Sabina to talk a bit about OCUL and governance and those kinds of structures.
Thanks, Gabby. So we'll start with we talk about Scholars Portal as a service of OCUL, so it's helpful to understand a little bit about what OCUL is. So OCUL, or the Ontario Council of University Library, is a consortium of all the university libraries in Ontario. It has 21 full members and also a few other membership tiers. So OCUL really focuses on collaboration to maximize the expertise and resources across academic libraries. This shows up in a few ways. One of the biggest ones is a collective purchasing and licensing, which is a common library consortium activity to license e-resources together. There's also the shared digital information infrastructure, which is partially what Scholars Portal is. OCUL also has a shared library services platform for soon to be 19 of its members called Omni. As well, there's collaborative planning, advocacy, communications, that sort of thing that OCUL takes care of on behalf of its members or acts on behalf of its members in the best interests of academic libraries and university libraries specifically in Ontario. Next slide, please. So Scholars Portal, as I kind of alluded to earlier, is the service arm of OCUL. It is hosted by U of T libraries, but it's really built by OCUL for OCUL. So we have technological infrastructure that provides access to the information resources that are licensed by OCUL. So I mentioned earlier, licensing is one of OCUL's biggest activities, the collective licensing. And at Scholars Portal, we have the technological infrastructure to help provide access to those licensed resources. We also have other digital services that respond to the needs of OCUL member libraries that can be effectively managed in a consortial way. So next slide. This is just a little bit of a piece of how this fits in. This is a little bit complicated. There will be an introduction to OCUL video being released in the next couple months that might make a little bit more sense of some of this governance, but just to look a little bit at the piece of governance that's directly related to Scholars Portal. So the member libraries, the 21 member libraries across Ontario, the directors of those libraries make up what's called the council. Sometimes we also call them the OCUL directors. And they're kind of the overall body that makes the decisions and has the authority for OCUL. They have a number of committees that report up to them. One of them is the Scholars Portal Operations and Development Committee, also called SPOD or sometimes OCUL SPOD. And that's the committee that provides direct guidance, direction, overseeing for Scholars Portal activities. So you see there's a little arrow towards Scholars Portal there. There's also a subcommittee of SPOD called the Scholars Portal Subcommittee, also sometimes called OCUL SP. This is what's known as a representative committee. So that means every single one of the OCUL members has a representative on this committee. So your institution would have what we would call a Scholars Portal representative or OCUL SP representative that makes up this subcommittee. And they play an active role in communication. They play an advisory role. They play an important role in making sure that what's happening at Scholars Portal gets communicated to you at member libraries, and also that your needs get communicated back up to us. And they help us plan things like Scholars Portal Days that are coming up. And then we have the University of Toronto libraries kind of hovering in the background there. It's really a little bit complicated to try to figure out how to visually represent the role of U of T libraries. So U of T is a member, so they have representation on these various groups as an OCUL member, but they're also the service provider or host for Scholars Portal. So Scholars Portal is based at the University of Toronto. Almost all Scholars Portal staff are University of Toronto employees. But the funding, the overall direction, and the ultimate responsibility for activities does go through OCUL, kind of by the means of U of T. That makes sense. It's a little bit complicated, but we do want to mention that, especially if you've ever gotten an email from someone from Scholars Portal, we do all have U of T email addresses because that is where we are based. So that's a brief introduction to the kind of OCUL background. I'll pass it back over to Gabby for the next section.
Okay, so we'll talk a bit about SPOT. So SPOT is the acronym that we use for the Scholars Portal operations team. So it's the staff at Scholars Portal, and SPOT, we're involved in a wide variety of projects and services that are available to students, librarians, faculty, and staff at these 21 university libraries. We're a combination of librarians, programmers, analysts, developers, RDM and metadata specialists, system administrators, all of whom sort of work across these various services and projects that are available to these universities. So we have a really incredible team and everyone works really, really hard. We come from a wide variety of expertise and disciplines, and we bring a lot of really unique assets to Scholars Portal as a service provider. So we did ask Spot to fill out a little survey in order to share a few fun facts about us with you to give us a better picture of who's working behind the scenes at SP to bring you these services, especially for those staff members who sort of, unlike Sabina and I, are maybe not quite as public facing or frequently popping up in your inboxes. So we have this fun little infographics here. Across Spot, we have lived in 25 different countries across the world. We generally prefer dogs over other pets, but cats are a very close second. For the most part, we're not very picky about our caffeine and we'll drink both or either tea or coffee, with a few very brave folks who don't drink either. 76% of us have studied at one of the 21 Ontario universities, and collectively we've worked at 8 different OCUL schools. We have a number of recent hires and then some longer term staff, with some of our longest Spot members having been with SP for 18 and 19 years, I think are our longest running staff members. And our most recent team member joined just a couple of months ago in January. So I think on average, we've been here about 7.3 years. There are many, many languages spoken across our team. Well over 50% of our staff speak 2 or more languages, and that doesn't even include like programming and coding languages, of which across the team we have proficiency in 15, which is very impressive and exciting. And something that we like to do together as a team is we do have a staff puzzle station that we try to work on together for a bit over lunch hours, sometimes for a little bit on Tuesday afternoons. If you need to have sort of a chat to work through a problem, it's nice to do it over a puzzle. And in 2023, we completed 17 and a half puzzles. The last one was a little tricky. We didn't quite get it finished before the holidays. And we placed approximately 16,500 puzzle pieces just last year. So we're very good at working collaboratively in tangible mediums as well with jigsaw puzzles. So this is our current Teams structure, which has changed a little bit since the last time this webinar was held in 2020, I believe. So we'll talk a little bit more about why those changes were made and how the team structures really benefit our services. But on the right, we have a screenshot from our website, which shows all or mostly all of our services. And these get broken down across with some overlap, these four teams here. And while there are some specific services listed, while there are no specific services listed under our systems team here, do not be fooled. They are very, very important to us. And the systems team really works across all of our services and is essential in supporting and building the overall Scholars Portal infrastructure. Sabina is going to talk a little bit more about the systems team in a little bit. But we're going to start with the client and content services team. And this is our largest team in terms of staffing. It's also the team that Sabina and I both work on. As with most of our teams, we have a pretty strong mix of librarians, programmers, analysts, metadata specialists, data architects, systems analysts. And the client and content services team is really focused on coordinating the backend development and delivery of our scholarly and research content and end user services that OCUL libraries provide to their patrons. So these services are like Ask a Librarian, ACE, the Accessible Content e-portal, Scholars Portal Journals, Scholars Portal Books, and Racer. So there are many, many layers of work involved in preparing the content for these services. We have to ensure that we have the necessary rights to load and host this content. Receiving the content and navigating some really large data transfers requires a lot of coordinating. We use an FTP server and work with each content provider to coordinate getting the content from their servers to ours. There's a significant amount of metadata work involved, making sure that the metadata we receive is correct. If there's any improvements that we need to make to this metadata on our end, making sure that it's compatible formats with our systems, and then loading the content to our platforms, making it available and discoverable. And then in terms of sort of the more specifically client services end of this work, we also provide troubleshooting and tech support. We manage the entitlements and access to these collections. We generate usage stats and reports for institutions. Outside of the content heavy services, there's also a lot of coordination and logistics, documentation and training for services like Ask a Librarian, ACE, Racer. And the client and content services team is also responsible for communications and assessment as a whole across all of Scholars Portal. So that facilitates a lot of collaboration across the different teams as well. It's a very intensive and labor-intensive work, extensive and labor-intensive workflows that require many different skill sets and specializations, which is why this team is so robust and comes from a lot of different disciplines. And these two teams used to be separate. There was a different structure, but because they really do tie together so strongly in their processes, that it just makes more sense to have these various moving parts work together as a cohesive unit. So starting with Ask a Librarian, which is our consortial virtual chat reference service, which began in 2011 and has been offered bilingually in both English and French since 2014. The service is staffed by librarians, library staff, and some library school students and recent graduates. We have 14 participating universities, or 16 if you are including our two affiliate universities, which is Université Saint Paul and Guelph Humber. And we also have a texting version of Ask a Librarian that is in use at 7 of the OCUL schools as well, or 7 of these 16 schools. Each participating institution has a dynamic chat button on their website. And when the service is open, users will see a click to chat option, and the icon will be sort of the chat bubbles on the slides here. Once users open the chat, they can enter their question, and that goes through the back end of the system we use called Library Help. And that's where online operators will then see the questions come through and can chat with patrons to assist them. Incoming chats will show to operators what school this chat is coming from. And if an operator from that specific school is online, they'll take that question. But if there is no operator from that school online, any operator is able to pick up the chat and help the user regardless of what institution they're coming from. There's always at least one designated bilingual operator staffing the chat so users can receive reference support in French at all times. And then when the service is closed, typically the icon will switch to an envelope icon, and users will be prompted to frequently email their institution's reference desk or sometimes be redirected to an FAQ. The texting service works basically the same way on the operator side, and that questions will appear in the same chat window in the system. But of course, for users able to text a specific phone number rather than using the service online on a computer. In terms of staffing, schools contribute staffing hours based on factors like enrollment and past use of the service. And then we also hire part-time operators, and these are usually library school students or recent graduates to help with staffing the chat in the evenings and on weekends. The service is open 67 hours per week, I believe, 7 days a week during regular fall and winter term. We have reduced hours in the summer, but no schools are staffing the chat sort of constantly during those hours. Staffing works on a rotational basis. So at Scholars Portal, we manage the chat software. We do some of the hiring for the operators, coordinating the scheduling. We run training sessions for operators, promotional materials, and conduct assessment as well. And then next we have Scholars Portal Journals, which was the first ever Scholars Portal service back in 2002. There are now over 67 million articles from over 27,000 full text journals on the platform, which is very exciting. Most of this content is licensed or purchased by OCUL member schools through OCUL or through CRKN or occasionally locally. We do also have a growing number of open access journals on the platform, though, and actually just recently in the last couple of months surpassed 4 million open access articles, which is very exciting. And some of these open access journals include those published on Scholars Portal hosted OJS instances, which again, Sabina will talk about in a little bit. Once the content is loaded, we also export all of our holdings to knowledge bases so they can be easily accessed through discovery layers. So for most schools now, this is Omni. And the Scholars Portal Journals platform is a certified trustworthy digital repository, or a TDR, as of 2013. So last year was the 10th anniversary of the TDR, yay. And this just means that we follow practices designed to ensure long-term preservation of all the content that we ingest. And we're also certified by Counter to provide standardized usage statistics in compliance with their code of practice. And I'm going to pass it back to Sabina now to talk about the rest of these services.
All right, thanks, Gabby. So the next service we want to talk about is the Scholars Portal Books platform. This is quite similar to the Scholars Portal Journals platform in that it's a place where we store and provide access to, originally it was mostly content licensed by OCUL or purchased by OCUL member libraries, in this case, ebooks, but we have expanded quite a bit over the years. So the service initially launched in 2008. At that time we had, it was based on a platform, kind of ebook platform that we had licensed from a vendor, but that was quite limited. So we ended up actually doing was going and building our own interface and infrastructure almost from scratch. And that new platform launched in 2018. It's been much better for us, much more flexible, much more easy to use, and easy for us to make changes to respond to user needs. So right now we have over 800,000 ebooks on the platform. So this includes monographs from commercial vendors and university presses, but it also includes government publications and public domain collections. And there's a really heavy focus on Canadian collections and Canadian books specifically. As part of that, we have a large Canadian University Press collection, which is available not just to OCUL members, but also to subscribers to that collection on the CRKN side as well. So there is a little bit of a national component to the Scholars Portal Books platform. And we are also growing open access and public domain content on the books platform. Partially, most of our government publications are open for anyone to access, but partially we're also trying to get more open access monographs on the platform in general. And the Scholars Portal Books platform is not currently a TDR, but we are in the process of implementing all of the TDR strategies on the books platform so that we can have the same level of long-term preservation for this content that we have for our journal content. Next slide. Thank you. All right, so very closely connected to the books platform is the Accessible Content ePortal service, or ACE. So this is a repository of about 25,000 digitized texts for library users with print disabilities that is accessible through the same interface as the Scholars Portal Books platform, although it's technically a separate database in the back end. So the other part of the ACE service is the actual digitization service that we use to add items to the repository on request. So basically how it works, if any library user at any of our member libraries who has a print disability needs a library book that's only available in print, that library can send it to us, and we will have it digitized with our digitization partner, Internet Archive Canada. It's converted into several different formats, and then we upload it into this ACE portal where um, all of our member libraries can then access it. We have a secure token process. So each library user who has registered with the print disability will get a secure and anonymous token that they can use to independently search and access all of this content that's already been digitized. So that's a significant benefit for A, for the libraries to have all this digitized content in one place, and B, for the users that they can search it independently. So the service began in 2012 as a pilot and became an official service in 2014. And then in 2014, we expanded to include the Ontario College libraries as well. So it really serves a broad Ontario post-secondary infrastructure. All right, next slide. All right, this is the last of our client services. It's one of our oldest ones, but it's also on the way out, so I won't spend too much time on it. But RACER, or Rapid Access to Collections through Electronic Requesting, is our interlibrary loan management system. It's been running since 2003, and it was extremely innovative in 2003, and much less so in 2024. It has not advanced overly much since 2003. So that will be sunsetting later this year. It's been more or less replaced by resource sharing functionality in Alma and the Omni network specifically, but we're still supporting it for now. So there's more information available on the user guide website if you're interested. But we wanted to mention Racer. All right, I think I'm passing it back to you, Gabby. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm keeping on going. Sorry. So that was the content and client services. Now we're going to switch to our next team, which is publishing, preservation, and web services. So this team includes the services that Scholars Portal offers related to digital publishing and preservation. So we have instances of OJS and OMP. We also have a preservation service called Permafrost and a cloud storage service called the OLRC, which I'll get into all of those later. There's also a upcoming pilot, or I guess recently started pilot project related to shared institutional repository infrastructure, and that's also within the portfolio of this team. These services do share some similarities with the client services that we talked about earlier, in that there's a lot of staff coordination, client support, developing policies, training materials and guides, and really deep expertise on this team in preservation practices and policies and in scholarly communications. In addition to those specific services, this team is also responsible for our sort of internal communication infrastructure, including our wiki, SpotDocs, which you may know recently migrated to a new platform. That's this team's responsibility, as well as our user guide website. And through the web services side of this team is also responsible for the development and maintenance of all of our front-end interfaces and websites at Scholars Portal. So they also have a really high level of experience in UX, user experience testing and user experience implementation, as well as web accessibility. So pretty much everything that you see online on a Scholars Portal website has gone through this team in some way. Next slide. Oh, I should also mention before I go on, we are missing a couple pictures from these team picture slides, but if you go to the Scholars Portal website, our full team is there. So the first service I want to talk about in this team is the Ontario Library Research Cloud, or OLRC, which is our internal cloud storage. So this is a secure cloud storage network that's distributed across the province. Basically, how it works is if you upload a file to the OLRC, we'll automatically create 3 copies that are stored at 3 of the 5 different data centers across the province. That means if there's a problem with one of the copies at one of the data centers, like say it gets corrupted, or maybe the data center gets struck by lightning and loses all of their data or something like that, you'll still have the other copies that will then be able to replicate a 3rd good copy to store at one of the other nodes. And these 5 nodes are based at 5 universities across Ontario, and they use the Orion network for data transfer. So when I say that there's a copy that's automatically created at 3 different institutions, that is being connected by this private network, not by the public internet. So your files are never on the public internet, except for maybe when you're, if you're like accessing them from home or something, that sort of final connection. But the connection between the nodes is all in the secure Orion network. So the OLRC actually provides backend storage for a lot of Scholars Portal services are now hosted on the OLRC, but we also have subscribers in OCUL, and this is one of the services where we have subscribers across Canada as well. You can use this for their backend storage. Next slide. So the next service to talk about is Permafrost. This is a preservation service for digital objects or digital collections. It's sort of a software as a service. It provides hosted Archivematica software, which is a software for processing digital archival material, as well as backend storage in the OLRC. But it's more than just the software, because part of Permafrost is the suite of tools, training, and resources that helps you to be able to process your digital collections and preserve them and archive them for the long term. So this service launched in 2016, so it's one of our newer services. We have 14 subscribers across Ontario, and this is also another one of the services where we have some national subscribers as well who use Permafrost for processing their digital collections. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so next we have our digital publishing services. These are the Open Journal System and Open Monograph Press software that we host. These are two softwares that are produced by the Public Knowledge Project, or PKP, which is based out of Simon Fraser University in BC. And they're software that you can host yourself, or that you can have a hosted version of, that lets your library basically become a publisher, publish its own journals, publish its own monographs, and it has the complete sort of publication workflow embedded in OJS, from submissions, peer review, all the way to hosting your final published articles. So we provide the hosting and kind of technical support for OJS for 14 schools. Open Monograph Press, which is the monograph version of the software, is not quite as popular as OJS, but we do still have a couple of instances of that for publishing books. One of the other advantages of OJS is that we do have a pipeline for preservation to be able to ingest content from our OJS instances into the journals platform, into the TDR for long-term preservation. OCUL is a development partner of PKP, and Scholars Portal staff who are on this team are quite involved in PKP and in the development and future testing of the technology of this software as it develops. And now I'm passing it back to Gabby.
Yes, now it's back to me. Thank you. Okay, so our next team is our data and geospatial services team. And with somewhat similar workflows to the client and content services team. In fact, there is a little bit of overlap in some team members, which we'll talk about in a minute. In that some of the client services team works quite closely with the data services team, and also for things like documentation, communications, troubleshooting. But there's also a lot of work involved in getting the rights to the content in order to host the data on our platforms. Transfer of large data files, geospatial data in particular, is enormous. Metadata cleanup, markup practices, and then developing and supporting the actual infrastructure for these platforms themselves. So for our data services, we also work quite closely with member institutions to load content that they've negotiated the rights for. And then in the case of Borealis, working with institutions to support researchers in uploading their own data. The data services team includes metadata and data librarians, GIS analysts, RDM specialists, programmers, web developers, and these team members work to ensure that we can provide not only extensive data collections, but also reliable and intuitive infrastructure to support data deposit, curation, discovery, and analysis. So, starting with Borealis, which is a bilingual, secure research data repository that supports discovery, management, sharing, and preservation of Canadian research data. Borealis is kind of unique in that while it began in 2012 as Scholars Portal Dataverse, since its transition to Borealis in 2019, it now has a national governance structure, so it's not exclusively a Scholars Portal service. Um, and Borealis is governed by a national service partnership with regional consortia, as well as the University of Toronto Libraries, the Digital Research Alliance of Canada, and a number of supporting research institutions and funders. But Scholars Portal is the service provider for Borealis with technical infrastructure hosted by the University of Toronto Libraries. So Borealis is based on open source Dataverse software, which is based out of Harvard University. And members of the Borealis team are actually right now at the Dataverse community meeting, the annual meeting, which is in Mexico City. And they're there right now and have been presenting on Borealis, which is very exciting. And just today, earlier this morning, actually, it was we released an announcement that sort of announcing the steering committee and governing bylaws for Borealis moving forward. So you've probably received an email about that or may see that on social media, but definitely check that out. In Borealis, researchers can upload their data and manage it throughout their research process. Borealis supports data sharing and reuse, versioning. All data sets in Borealis are given DOIs to support persistent data citation. Borealis also has inbuilt data visualization and analysis options through the Data Explorer tool. There's also a data curation tool for curating data, adding labels, groups, weights, etc. And we do have documentation to support researchers through using Borealis for data discovery as well as sort of backend data curation and data deposit. Universities and research institutions all across Canada subscribe to Borealis. You can see a complete list of the subscribers on the Borealis website, though it may not be 100% up to date. We've had a few new subscribers recently, I believe. So that may be updated soon, but it's a very extensive list. And Borealis is a fully bilingual service. And this was made possible in collaboration with l'Université de Montréal in developing the internationalization code, which was actually the focus of a presentation that one of our Borealis team members, Jonathan Dory, presented on at the Dataverse community meeting earlier this week. The Scholars Geo Portal is our geospatial data search and discovery tool. It launched in 2012, and currently we're in sort of the early stages of a GeoPortal redevelopment project. So more information on that will be made available in the coming months as work gets underway. But the GeoPortal provides access to large-scale geospatial data sets, as well as sophisticated search, discovery, and analysis tools to make the data readily available to Ontario researchers. It lets users find geospatial data, preview it, and download it then for further analysis. Our data collections include like land-based data, water, road and boundaries, points of interest, aerial imagery. We have national, provincial, and municipal data sets, as well as license data from vendors. And one of our sort of highlight projects is working with OCUL institutions' map libraries through sort of very large-scale digitization project in order to load open collections of historical maps to the GeoPortal, including over 1,000 historical topographic maps covering the entire province of Ontario. And these topographic maps are among our most popular GeoPortal collections year after year, and these collections are open access. Odyssey is the oldest of our data services. It began as a collaborative community project back in 2007 before officially launching as a service in 2008. And by now, surely at least most of you have heard that we recently relaunched Odyssey back in October. I sent many emails about it. You've probably received a few. And hopefully you've had a chance to check out the new site and explore it a little bit. So Odyssey is our social science microdata repository containing mostly survey data. So public opinion polls is a significant part of that collection. Government surveys like the Canadian Election Study. We have surveys on health, education, environment, labor and employment, as well as census data. Users can use Odyssey to browse and search for data sets, conduct data analysis using built-in analysis tools, which is what we call that Data Explorer tool through Borealis, or download data to analyze in their preferred software. Um, we get Statistics Canada and other Canadian government data through the Data Liberation Initiative. It's a partnership between StatsCan and post-secondary institutions for improving access to Canadian data sources. And much of this data is now open, with a few select collections sort of remaining licensed and restricted to subscribing institutions, but much of this data is now open access. And then we also partner with individual institutions to collect data that they've negotiated access to. This is mainly for public opinion polls that different institutions have sort of partnerships with these polling companies. And then we're able to provide access to those collections through Odyssey and preserve those collections. Data sets in Odyssey are curated and described by staff at Canadian academic libraries using DDI, or Data Documentation Initiative metadata standard. So it's a very collaborative project. We have a group called the Market program that does a lot of data markup for us. And the new Odyssey, as we see it now, is fully integrated with Borealis in the back end for data curation, deposit, preservation, and analysis options, which enables the use of that data explorer tool and things like DOIs for data sets as well.
All right, well, that was all of our services, but we do have one final team to talk about. Last but not least, this is the systems team, and they are really the team that underpins all of our work. If you describe Scholars Portal as the technological infrastructure arm of OCUL, these are really the people who make the technological infrastructure run. So they're responsible for all of our physical and software infrastructure. So that includes all of our servers here at the data center in the U of T libraries, as well as helping to maintain the OLRC nodes across the province, countless, virtual machines and other computer things that I don't even understand the totality of. They're also responsible for all of our data storage, which we have significant amounts of, and backups, our IT security, backends of our platforms, and also various technologies like the FTPs and other methods for transferring those large volumes of data that we receive from vendors. So they really make all of that run, make sure we're all up to date and that our technology has enough capacity to sufficiently support all the work we do. And really, yeah, as I said, their work really just underpins everything that we do at Scholars Portal. So that was all of our services and all of our teams. I know that was a lot of information to throw at you, but we're just going to talk a little bit about how these things fit together now that we've told you all the things that we do, and hopefully it will start to sort of coalesce everything that happens at Scholars Portal. So here's a quick timeline. As we kind of mentioned while we were going, sort of when some of these services arose, you can see that our services as they've gone through have kind of responded to the needs of OCUL member libraries at the time they were created. So in 2002, 2003, having a digital way of managing interlibrary loans or electronic way of managing interlibrary loans was very important. And having a place where you could collect all of the e-journals that we were really starting to purchase at that time heavily in the early 2000s was really important. So that's where our earliest services, Journals and Racer, came from. Whereas in the last several years, you see publishing services, OLRC, permafrost. These are really in response to the new digital environment that we have now, with this emphasis on storage, this emphasis on digital publishing, this emphasis on maintaining digital archives. So that's kind of the trajectory of this services. And this also only includes our current services. I could give you like an absolutely wild diagram of all of the services that we used to have that we don't have any longer. But yes, so we also do know how to stop doing things when they no longer serve the needs of our members. We have 3 different service models. And I think it's helpful to talk about this because we didn't really talk about this when we mentioned the individual services too much, but there might be some services here that you have heard of and some services here that your institution doesn't have access to. That's because we have a few different types of service models. So the first one is we have core services that are available by default to all OCUL institutions. So many of our older services fall into this category, including the journals and books platforms, Odyssey, even Racer. So these are things that you might not have access to, for example, every journal in journals, because that depends on your own institution's licensing, but the platform itself is one of our core services and therefore available to all OCUL institutions. We also have opt-in services where each institution has to opt in, and there may be extra fees or some kind of extra responsibility involved in being part of that service. So Ask a Librarian is a great example of that. If you opt into Ask a Librarian, not only is there an extra fee for participation, but also you have to contribute a certain amount of staffing to be involved. So Ask a Librarian is an opt-in service. Our OJS services, for example, or Permafrost are other examples of opt-in services. And then we also do offer some services externally that includes both core services and opt-in services. These are services that we offer generally on a subscription basis to institutions or consortia outside of OCUL. So next slide. Thank you. These are some of the services that we offer beyond OCUL. Borealis is an interesting one because it started out as just kind of like an OCUL Scholars Portal service that eventually grew into a fully national service. So the governance for that one is actually not even within OCUL anymore. But we have another set of services, including Odyssey, Permafrost, OLRC, the books platform, that have subscribers from outside of OCUL. In some cases, they're individual institutions like Permafrost. In some cases, it can be whole consortia that are subscribers. So we have academic libraries across Canada who subscribe. We have Ontario colleges that are participating in some of our services, other Canadian academic institutions and research institutions, such as the National Gallery of Canada. And I'll pass it back over to Gabby.
So in terms of our technology values, there are again sort of three main areas that we focus on. We adopt open source technologies wherever possible. This is becoming more feasible as more options are available to us, and this really allows us to customize our services and develop them to our users' needs rather than having to always rely on larger, often like American-based vendors or corporations. And on top of this, then we really also prioritize in-house and collaborative development for building upon this open source software for our services. And this gives us, again, more control over those services. And when we're working within open source communities, we can then share what we develop and learn from others. So it's a really collaborative workflow as well. And then finally, we really strongly believe in owning and hosting our own data as much as possible. Sort of, going back to the OLRC as well, in terms of this helps us protect the privacy of our users as well as ensuring a safe online environment. So we're nearing the end now. Thank you for listening. We do really encourage everyone to get involved with Scholars Portal in some way, if you can, if you're interested. So that can include connecting with your OCUL SP rep to see what opportunities are available, how this work ties into your institution directly. Please join our listserv to get news and updates from us about projects and service developments, webinars like this, events like Scholars Portal Days, which are coming up soon. And any other important communications. You can also join an OCUL community. There are a list of the communities on the OCUL website there. And while we may be scattered across a few different platforms right now as we try to navigate Twitter and transitions to new platforms, please be sure to follow us on at least one of these platforms. We're currently cross-posting across all three, so you do not have to follow us on all three to get all the info, but definitely please check those out. And then just for some final resources and to learn more, check out our website, our wiki, Spot Docs, which is now in its new home on XWikis. We've migrated away from Confluence. Yay, it looks beautiful. Again, the web systems team did an incredible job on it, so check that out. We also have a newsletter that we publish 3 times a year. If you're subscribed to our listserv, you'll receive the newsletter, and you can also view past issues of the newsletter on our Learn site, linked on the slides here. Also on that site, our user guides and documentation for our services, so be sure to check those out as well. And finally, we have our past annual reports available on the OCUL site, and we are just starting work on this year's annual report, so there will be another one in the coming months. And that is all from us today. Thank you very much. And we have some time for questions. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. You're welcome to unmute and ask. I'm just going to pause the recording before we go into the questions. So thank you very much.